The night was colder than he had expected, the wind slicing through the valley with a quiet menace that only the desert could harbor. He walked carefully along the narrow path, carrying bundles of firewood that seemed heavier than they were, each step echoing softly against the stones. The Apache village lay in shadow, silent and distant, yet he felt the weight of their gaze, invisible but penetrating, as if the night itself watched him measure each gesture. His hands trembled not from the chill, but from the uncertainty of how such a small act could be received by those whose world had known hardship beyond imagination. He paused at the edge of the camp, observing the faint outlines of huts and the whisper of a fire struggling against the dark. He laid the wood down gently, arranging it with a precision that spoke of care and respect. Every movement was deliberate, a silent conversation between his intentions and the unknown recipients of his kindness. He wondered if they would even notice, if such an offering could ever matter in a world that had hardened hearts against strangers, against acts of goodwill unprovoked and unannounced. A soft breeze carried the faint scent of sage and smoke from the village, and he realized that the smallest decisions often held the greatest weight. This simple act, bringing firewood to a people who had never known him, was a test of courage, humility, and patience. Each log placed was a silent message, a bridge extending across the chasm of mistrust, a testament to the notion that even in the harshest lands, kindness could ignite connections unseen, unheard, yet profoundly felt. As he stepped back, the shadows of the night seemed to shift, as if the earth itself had taken notice of his deed. He felt a strange stillness, the kind that precedes change, the quiet tension of a world holding its breath. The thought struck him sharply. Sometimes, the smallest gestures create ripples far larger than any storm could ever produce. In that moment, he understood that the night would carry this secret, and dawn would reveal its consequences in ways he could not yet imagine. By the time the first stars faded and the horizon blushed with the promise of morning, he had left the camp behind and returned to his own cabin, heart heavy with anticipation and hope. He could not know that before the sun had fully risen, the tribe would gather, voices low and reverent, recognizing something beyond his understanding, a silent honor, a trust, and ultimately, a recognition that would mark him forever as a guardian in a land defined by courage, respect, and the quiet power of selfless deeds. The first rays of dawn crept slowly over the jagged hills, spilling gold across the valley as the Apache village stirred with cautious life. He watched from a distance, hidden by the shadows of the early morning, as smoke rose from small fires and the soft murmur of voices carried across the wind. Each sound seemed amplified in the quiet, every movement laden with unspoken history. He felt the weight of their eyes upon him, even unseen, sensing that the act of leaving firewood was more than a gift. It was a test of trust, one he had offered without expectation, yet with the silent hope that it would speak louder than words. Inside the village, an elder noticed the neatly stacked wood and paused mid-step, brow furrowed in curiosity. He ran his fingers over the logs, sensing the care in their placement, the deliberate attention to detail that spoke of respect for their traditions and their lives. Whispers spread among the villagers, cautious but intrigued, as they exchanged glances and silent questions. In that instant, he understood the subtle power of observation, how the smallest acts could ignite contemplation, how patience could turn hesitation into curiosity, and how humility could pierce the shields of suspicion. He retreated to the edge of the ridge, heart pounding, every sound of shifting earth or clinking tools echoing in his chest. The silence was almost unbearable, yet it carried a promise that the day would not unfold in chaos, but in the careful unfolding of human connection. The wind whispered through the canyons, tugging at his coat and brushing against his cheeks like a cautious reminder. This land, harsh and unforgiving as it was, had eyes and memory, and it would not forget acts of courage or kindness. Minutes stretched into hours, and the villagers began their morning routines, unaware that his presence lingered in the margins of their awareness. He marveled at their resilience, at how every movement, carrying water, tending fires, feeding children, was measured and purposeful, shaped by generations of survival in a land that demanded respect and cunning. Observing them, he felt both an outsider and a participant in a story larger than himself, realizing that life in the frontier was never merely about survival, but about understanding the delicate balance between strength and empathy. By mid-morning, he ventured closer, careful not to startle or intrude. Every step was deliberate, measured, his eyes scanning for the right moment to show himself, to speak or act without breaking the fragile trust forming around his unseen deed. The elders had gathered near the fire circle, eyes sharp, watching, assessing the forest and the distant ridge. He understood, then, that trust was not granted lightly. It had to be earned through consistent action, patience, and respect, and that today, he would take the first steps toward becoming more than a stranger, toward being recognized as someone who could walk beside them without fear or reproach. The next day unfolded with a quiet intensity, the air thick with anticipation, as if the land itself was holding its breath. He returned to the village, carrying nothing this time, standing at a safe distance, letting the sun warm his back while he observed the routines that marked daily life. Children played along the dusty paths, their laughter tentative and curious, blending with the rhythmic chants of hunters preparing their morning meals. Each sound was a testament to life persevering in the face of hardship, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, vitality and hope could flourish. An elder finally approached him, eyes narrowed but steady, carrying an air of cautious authority that demanded both respect and sincerity. He bowed slightly, his hands open and empty, a gesture of humility and peace. The silence stretched, almost unbearable, as the elder studied him, noting his posture, his intentions, the subtle tension in his shoulders. In that moment, words were unnecessary. The unspoken communication of intent, honor, and patience conveyed more than any declaration could. Trust, he realized, was never immediate. It was a delicate thread woven through observation, consistency, and the proof of actions matching words. The villagers gathered slowly, forming a semicircle that radiated curiosity and guarded interest. Children peered over shoulders, elders whispered amongst themselves, and the air buzzed with anticipation. He felt a weight settle upon him. Not fear, but responsibility. The responsibility of becoming a part of a community that had tested the strength of his character before he had even spoken a word. Every glance, every gesture, every subtle nod carried the weight of judgment, yet also the possibility of acceptance. Suddenly, a young Apache boy stepped forward, breaking the tension with a hesitant smile and an innocent question about the firewood left the day before. Laughter followed, a quiet ripple, but significant, breaking the initial formality and opening the first channels of connection. He knelt, speaking gently, recounting the simple reason for the gift, the intention behind each carefully placed log. Eyes widened, eyebrows lifted, and a subtle shift occurred, as if the collective heart of the village recognized the sincerity in his actions, acknowledging the beginning of a bond that would grow far beyond the small act of firewood. By sunset, he was no longer merely an observer. The elders had spoken in hushed tones, children followed curiously, and the aura of respect that now surrounded him was palpable. The day closed with quiet reflection, the wind carrying faint sounds of laughter and the scent of cooking fires. He realized then that trust, once granted, was a living thing. It required protection, nurturing, and continuous proof of integrity. And in that realization, he felt the stirrings of a destiny far greater than he had imagined, one that would soon reveal itself in ways that neither he nor the village could have anticipated. The following morning brought a strange stillness to the valley, as if the world itself paused in anticipation of what was to come. He awoke before the sun, the crisp air biting at his cheeks, and felt the weight of the unspoken promise he now carried. Every log he had delivered, every step he had taken with care, had built an invisible bridge between him and the Apache people. Today, that bridge would either strengthen or falter, and the uncertainty set his heart racing with a mixture of fear and hope. He approached the village cautiously, aware that his previous gestures had set eyes upon him, measured every step with deliberate calm. The elders were already outside their lodges, their gazes fixed on him with intensity that both unnerved and reassured. In their silence, he detected not suspicion but evaluation, a weighing of character, of intentions, of courage. The moment demanded patience. It was a test far more intricate than any duel, a confrontation of values rather than weapons. Children gather at the edges of the circle, eyes wide with curiosity, mimicking the cautious movements of their elders. One small hand reached for his coat sleeve, a tentative touch that sent a warmth through him he had not expected. It was the first sign that trust, once offered by action alone, could begin to manifest in the smallest gestures, subtle but infinitely powerful. In that touch, he saw the fragility and beauty of human connection, the fragile beginnings of bonds that could withstand hardship, distance, and time. The elder who had first approached him the day before stepped forward, holding a piece of carved wood, a symbol of respect among the tribe. He extended it silently, eyes unwavering, a gesture that spoke volumes of acknowledgement and tentative acceptance. He accepted it with both hands, bowing deeply, recognizing that the unspoken contract of respect and kindness had been honored. The tribe traditions were ancient, their ways profound, and to be recognized by them was not a simple honor. It was a testament to his integrity, patience, and courage. As the sun rose higher, warming the valley and casting long shadows behind the huts, he felt the first inklings of belonging. He was still an outsider, yes, but the threads of connection had been woven into the very fabric of the day, uniting him with the tribe in ways that defied language or explanation. Every glance, every nod, every quiet murmur carried the weight of understanding. The seed of trust had taken root, and he could sense that it would grow into something far larger than the act of firewood alone, something capable of bridging worlds and hearts alike. By midday, the village had come alive with an energy that was both familiar and transformative. Tasks continued with precision, yet there was a subtle shift in posture, in the way elders whispered to one another, and children ran past him without hesitation. The small act of leaving firewood had initiated a cascade of awareness, an acknowledgement that kindness could arrive unannounced but leave a lasting mark. Every log he had placed now carried the weight of meaning, silently speaking to generations of history, courage, and survival. He spent the afternoon moving through the village, careful not to impose, careful to mirror the rhythms of life around him. Each encounter, from the blacksmith tending his forge to the women weaving baskets by the river, was an opportunity to observe, learn, and deepen the trust that had begun to form. He discovered that the people's resilience was matched only by their attentiveness to detail, their awareness of the world, and their understanding of subtlety in human action. He realized that this was the true strength of the tribe, not weapons or numbers, but the depth of connection and observation honed over generations. A sudden commotion at the far edge of the village drew his attention. A young warrior had stumbled, dropping a small bundle of arrows into the dust. He rushed forward instinctively, helping the boy gather them with careful hands, and felt the immediate shift in perception. Gratitude, surprise, and acknowledgement flickered across the youth's face, a silent validation that trust and respect could be extended and received through the smallest actions. In that moment, he understood that relationships in this world were earned through consistency, humility, and courage expressed not only in grand gestures, but also in the minutiae of everyday life. The elder who had given him the carved wood returned, accompanied by 2 more men, their faces stern yet curious. They spoke little, but their presence was a statement, a quiet declaration that the act of firewood had not gone unnoticed, and that they now evaluated him on every movement, every intention. He met their gazes steadily, understanding that this was a pivotal moment, the transition from cautious acknowledgement to deeper acceptance, the point at which one's character is measured in silence as much as in speech. As the sun began its descent, painting the village in warm amber tones, he felt a profound shift within himself. He was no longer merely an observer or a stranger. He had become a participant in the living story of the village. The threads of respect, patience, and courage had woven a tapestry connecting him to the people, fragile yet strong, tenuous yet undeniable. And in the fading light, he sensed that the true test of this bond, the moment when actions would meet destiny, was still to come, waiting in the dawn yet to rise. The night settled over the valley like a velvet blanket, stars piercing the darkness with quiet brilliance. He sat just beyond the village, listening to the crackle of fires and the soft murmurs of conversations carried on the wind. Each flicker of light, each whisper of movement, reminded him of the delicate balance he now occupied, an outsider yet recognized, a man whose actions had spoken louder than words. He realized that in the harsh expanse of the West, courage and kindness were measured not by grand feats, but by moments like these, where patience and respect held greater weight than any weapon. The elders convened near the largest fire, their silhouettes stark against the glowing embers. He could sense the discussion, their careful deliberation, the weighing of character, history, and potential. It was a process that demanded time and observation, a reminder that trust could never be hurried or forced. He watched as the firelight danced across their faces, highlighting the lines of experience and wisdom carved by generations of survival. It dawned on him that true leadership and recognition were not claimed. They were earned in silence, through consistency, and through acts that revealed the depth of one's heart. A sudden rustle in the brush drew his attention, and he noticed a young girl approaching the fire, carrying a small, intricately woven basket. Her eyes met his briefly, hesitant yet bold, and she placed the basket at his feet without a word. Inside, he found dried herbs and a simple charm of protection, a gesture that transcended language and custom. He understood immediately. The village was beginning to embrace him, acknowledging not just his actions, but the spirit behind them. In that quiet moment, he felt a surge of gratitude, a recognition that connection and belonging were far more profound than any reward or title. As the moon rose high, illuminating the valley in silver light, he reflected on the events of the past 2 days. Every gesture, every silent observation, had contributed to a growing sense of unity between himself and the tribe. He realized that the simplest actions, like leaving firewood or helping a stumbling child, could ripple outward, creating bonds that strengthened over time. The lesson was clear. In a world shaped by hardship and unpredictability, it was the steadfastness of character, the courage to act with integrity, and the humility to honor others that left a lasting impact. Before retiring for the night, he made his way back to his cabin, the scent of smoke and pine mingling in the cool air. He glanced back at the village, feeling a profound sense of anticipation for the dawn. He understood that tomorrow would mark a new chapter, not just for him, but for the tribe as well. The seeds of trust had been sown, nurtured by patience and courage, and he sensed that they were about to bloom in ways none of them could yet imagine. Dawn arrived in a quiet symphony of light, spilling across the valley and awakening the village to another day of labor, observation, and life. He approached the village with measured steps, his heart aware of the subtle energy shifting in the air. There was a sense of expectancy, a quiet electricity, as if the very land knew that a moment of reckoning or revelation was approaching. Every footfall, every sound of his boots against the hard-packed soil, felt amplified in the stillness, each carrying the weight of the acts that had preceded this morning. The elders were already assembled, their eyes sharp and discerning, reflecting the history and wisdom of generations. He could feel their evaluation like a tangible force, measuring every subtle gesture, every breath. They had observed his actions, the firewood, the care, the patience, and now they sought to determine whether his spirit aligned with the principles of their tribe. The air was taut with expectation, the valley itself holding its breath as if nature recognized the significance of the moment. Children gathered around, sensing the tension and the quiet importance of the morning, their laughter subdued, their steps careful. One small boy approached, carrying a smooth, flat stone etched with symbols of protection and courage. He handed it to him without hesitation, eyes wide with trust and curiosity. The gesture was simple, yet its impact profound, an acknowledgement from the youngest members that he had earned a place among them, that the bond formed by his actions had begun to permeate the hearts of the entire community. He knelt to accept the stone, bowing in respect and gratitude, understanding that this simple exchange carried more weight than any proclamation or speech. Trust had been earned in silence, through consistent acts of kindness, patience, and observation, and now it manifested in gestures that transcended words. The elders exchanged subtle nods, their faces softening, and the tension that had hung over him since his first arrival began to dissolve into a quiet harmony. By mid-morning, a transformation had taken hold. The village moved with a rhythm that included him now, subtle yet undeniable. Where once he was a distant observer, he had become a participant, recognized not for his presence alone, but for the depth of his integrity and the sincerity of his actions. He understood, finally, that being accepted was not merely about gestures. It was about embodying the values, respect, and courage that the tribe revered. And in that understanding, he felt a quiet certainty that he had crossed the threshold from stranger to guardian, a title that would soon be confirmed in ways more extraordinary than he could have ever imagined. By late morning, the village was alive with a quiet anticipation, as if the very wind carried whispers of what was to come. He moved carefully among the lodges, offering quiet greetings and small gestures of help wherever he could, mindful of the eyes that followed every movement. He understood that each action was under scrutiny, not with suspicion, but as part of the tribe's way of ensuring that the values he displayed were genuine and consistent. Every log, every careful step, every respectful nod had contributed to a story being written in the hearts of those around him. A sudden drumbeat echoed from the central clearing, drawing the attention of every villager. It was a call for assembly, a ritual signal that demanded focus and reverence. He felt a pang of nervous excitement, sensing that this was the moment when his presence would be formally acknowledged, where his quiet acts of kindness would be weighed and recognized by the community as a whole. He adjusted his posture, straightened his coat, and stepped forward with deliberate humility, aware that destiny often arrived in silence before exploding into recognition. As he approached the center of the clearing, the elders formed a circle, their expressions serene yet commanding. They gestured for him to stand in the midst of them, a position both daunting and honorable. The children stood behind the adults, their eyes shining with admiration and curiosity. Every movement seemed to carry a symbolic weight, every glance a measure of judgment tempered with the wisdom of generations. He felt the gravity of the moment settle deep within his chest, a mixture of pride, anxiety, and hope swirling like the wind across the plains. The eldest of the tribe stepped forward, raising a hand to signal silence. The murmurs faded instantly, leaving a profound stillness that seemed to stretch across the valley. He could feel the collective gaze upon him, the weight of tradition, and the anticipation of acknowledgement pressing gently but insistently against his spirit. And then, the elder spoke, words deliberate and resonant, acknowledging not only his deeds but the intentions that had guided them, the respect he had shown, and the courage he had displayed without expectation of reward. As the words sank into the quiet air, he realized that this moment transcended personal recognition. It was a testament to the power of integrity, humility, and consistent kindness. The tribe had witnessed not only his actions but the truth of his heart, and in that revelation, he felt a deep sense of belonging. The bond forged through simple gestures had grown into a bridge of trust, now unbreakable, connecting him to the people, their land, and the legacy of a culture that measured worth not by wealth or skill, but by character and heart. The sun had climbed high, casting warm light over the clearing, illuminating faces of acceptance and pride. The elders now surrounded him completely, their presence both protective and reverent. It was clear that his actions had not only been observed, but had resonated, creating ripples that touched every corner of the village. Each gesture, each small act of thoughtfulness, had been a thread in a tapestry woven of trust, courage, and patience, a tapestry that now recognized him as more than a visitor, but as a part of their enduring story. A young warrior approached, holding a ceremonial staff carved with symbols of guardianship and honor. He extended it to him with a steady hand, eyes unwavering. The silence that followed was immense, filled with the weight of tradition and expectation. As he accepted the staff, he bowed deeply, feeling the enormity of the role he had unwittingly stepped into. The tribe's acknowledgement was complete. He was no longer a stranger, but a guardian in the eyes of people whose values had shaped him as much as he had influenced them. Children gathered around him, laughing softly and offering gifts of wildflowers and hand-woven charms. Each token, though small, was imbued with the essence of the tribe's trust and admiration. He realized, then, that belonging was not only about acceptance from elders, but also about the unguarded love of those who looked to him as a symbol of kindness, courage, and protection. It was a moment of profound connection, a testament to the transformative power of selfless actions. The elders conferred briefly among themselves, then stepped back, allowing the village to witness the completion of the ritual. A cheer erupted, not loud or boisterous, but filled with the resonance of gratitude and acknowledgement. The collective heart of the tribe, once distant and cautious, now beat in harmony with his own. The firewood he had delivered, the care he had shown, and the patience he had exercised had all converged into a singular truth. Acts of kindness, however small, have the power to shape destinies. As the ceremony concluded, he looked across the valley, taking in the faces of the tribe, the flickering flames, and the rolling hills beyond. A sense of quiet fulfillment washed over him. He had come as an outsider, guided only by compassion and courage, and had been embraced as a guardian. The realization was profound. In the harsh, unforgiving expanse of the West, true strength lay not in power or wealth, but in the courage to act with integrity, in the humility to honor others, and in the unwavering persistence of kindness. The afternoon sun hung low, casting long shadows that stretched across the village, painting the earth in hues of gold and amber. He moved among the people, now greeted with smiles, nods, and gestures of respect that once would have seemed impossible. Every corner of the village bore witness to the quiet transformation that had taken place. The outsider who had arrived with nothing but good intentions now stood as a figure of trust and guardianship. The weight of recognition was both humbling and invigorating, a reminder that true impact often grows slowly, nurtured by consistency and care. From the outskirts of the village, the young boy who had earlier handed him the protective stone ran forward, holding a small pouch filled with seeds. The child's eyes shone with hope and pride, and he offered the gift without hesitation. It was a symbolic gesture of continuity and growth, a way of acknowledging that the bonds formed were not fleeting but intended to last, to take root and flourish like the seeds he carried. He accepted them with gratitude, recognizing the layers of meaning within such a simple offering. The elders watched from their place near the central fire, observing the interactions with quiet satisfaction. They saw not only the actions but the underlying intent, the integrity that had guided him without fanfare or expectation. In this moment, he understood the depth of their culture. Honor and acceptance were earned not through spectacle or boast, but through patience, humility, and selfless action. Each smile, each gesture of inclusion, reinforced the truth that he had become an integral part of something far greater than himself. As he walked to the edge of the village, the wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, mingling with the earthy aroma of sun-warmed soil. He paused, taking in a landscape that had once felt alien, but now felt profoundly familiar. Every tree, every stone, every ripple of the river reflected the lessons of trust, courage, and quiet determination that had guided him to this point. It was a reminder that connection, once forged, could transcend barriers and transform not just the hearts of others, but one's own understanding of purpose and belonging. The sun began to sink beneath the horizon, and the village took on a serene, almost sacred glow. The laughter of children, the gentle hum of conversations, and the crackling of fires formed a symphony of life that resonated deeply within him. He realized that the journey had not been about recognition alone, but about the profound impact of everyday choices, the power of simple gestures, and the enduring truth that compassion and respect could bridge worlds, cultures, and hearts. Twilight descended like a soft cloak, enveloping the valley in shades of deep purple and crimson. The elders gathered once more, signaling the end of the day's ceremonies, but also the beginning of a new chapter. He stood at the center, fully aware that the title of guardian was more than symbolic. It carried responsibility, trust, and the promise of protection. The air was filled with a reverent silence, as if the land itself acknowledged the transformation that had occurred, marking the union of hearts and spirits across cultures. Children approached him cautiously at first, then with growing confidence, offering small tokens, feathers, hand-woven charms, and carved stones. Each gift was imbued with meaning, representing trust, respect, and acceptance. He received them all with humility, bowing slightly to honor the intent behind each gesture. The simplest exchanges, he realized, were often the most powerful, solidifying bonds that words alone could never convey. The elders spoke briefly, their words deliberate and filled with gravitas, acknowledging the integrity, courage, and kindness he had displayed. They recounted the acts that had drawn him closer to the tribe, the firewood left at the door, the quiet assistance offered without expectation, and the respect shown for their customs. Each act was honored as a testament to the strength of character and the enduring value of humility and service. He listened intently, feeling the weight of their recognition and the deep responsibility that accompanied it. As night fell and the stars emerged one by one, he stood at the village's edge, gazing across the valley. A profound sense of fulfillment filled him. He had arrived as a stranger, but through unwavering integrity and simple, thoughtful actions, he had become a guardian, a trusted presence in a world that once felt distant and forbidding. The lesson was indelible. In a harsh, unforgiving land, it is not power or skill that earns respect, but the quiet strength of heart, the courage to act rightly, and the consistency of one's deeds. With the tribe settled and the night embracing the valley, he understood that this was only the beginning. The bonds formed would guide both him and the people through trials yet to come, creating a legacy of trust, courage, and connection that would endure for generations. He smiled softly, aware that in the quiet moments between dawn and dusk, the true power of kindness, respect, and integrity had revealed itself, and that the world was forever changed by the ripple of a single, thoughtful act. As the night settled over the valley and the last embers of the village fires glowed softly, he reflected on the journey that had led him here. What began as a simple act, leaving firewood at the Apache's door, had grown into a bond of trust, respect, and honor that transcended words. The lesson was clear. The most profound impact often comes from small, deliberate actions performed with sincerity. In a world that measures success by wealth, status, or power, it was the quiet courage of integrity that had earned him a place among those who live by values older than the hills themselves. He thought of the children who had offered feathers and charms, of the elders who had acknowledged his deeds, and of the villagers who now saw him not as an outsider, but as a guardian. Each interaction had been a thread woven into a tapestry of connection and belonging. It was a reminder that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to transform lives, create trust, and build bridges that span generations. What he had learned in this remote corner of the West was a truth that could guide anyone willing to act with heart, humility, and consistency. The echo of the tribe's chants, the warmth of their acceptance, and the weight of their trust settled deep within him, leaving an indelible mark on his spirit. This was more than recognition. It was a call to uphold the values that had guided him, to continue acting with selfless intention, and to understand that true guardianship is earned not through expectation, but through action. His journey had begun with firewood and ended with responsibility, a tangible reminder that the ripple of one person's good deeds can extend far beyond the horizon they first see. As he gazed toward the hills where dawn would soon rise, he felt a profound sense of purpose. Life, much like the harsh yet beautiful landscapes of the West, rewards those who persist in doing right even when unseen, who offer compassion without seeking return, and who embrace courage in its quietest forms. The story of that one act of kindness, simple, unassuming, yet transformative, serves as a timeless lesson. The impact of our deeds is measured not by recognition, but by the lives we touch and the trust we cultivate along the way. If this story moved you, imagine the power of applying its lesson in your own life. Take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. What small act of courage or kindness has changed your world? And if you want more stories that inspire, captivate, and remind us of the profound impact of integrity, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button if this story resonated with you, and be part of a community that values courage, connection, and the transformative power of simple, heartfelt actions.